Bem-vindos, welcome, bem-vindos ao Immersive Talks do Brasil Immersive Fashion Week. É um evento criado para ser um laboratório de novas experiências entre moda e tecnologia. O meu nome é Luisa Fedrizzi, mas vocês podem me chamar de Luli. Eu sou jornalista, sou estrategista criativa e sou líder da operação brasileira da Contagious. É um publisher e uma consultoria inglesa dedicada à excelência criativa e estratégica e inovação para marcas e agências do mundo todo. Se essa é a sua primeira visita ao nosso conteúdo, eu te convido ao site brifw.com, onde você vai poder assistir a todas as incríveis conversas que estão rolando nessa primeira edição do evento e, inclusive, rever essa que a gente vai começar agora, quando você quiser. A partir daqui, eu vou começar a falar em inglês, já que o nosso papo de hoje é também com uma galera do Reino Unido. Hi, everyone. So now officially kicking off in English, our talk. It's a pleasure and an honor to be a part of this event. Such an amazing and necessary initiative to shed light on the most contemporary debates and projects in fashion today. It's also a pleasure to be hosting this conversation with such an amazing and powerful group of thinkers and creators as the Immersive Kind. And I have to say, also great to be just among women having this conversation, because we all know that unfortunately it's not as common as it should be in the tech and in the creative industries. So kudos for the event, for this great and diverse and representative curatorship and the opportunity for us to be discussing here this together. So before we start, I'm just gonna do a quick introduction of you guys, just your names and what you do, and then you can tell us a bit more, each one of you, of your roles and your activities, let's say, in the Immersive Kind. So we're here today to talk about the future of fashion and digital consumption. And we have Katie James and Lucy Wheeler, they're founders and creative directors at the Immersive Kind. And we also have Damara Inglês and Scarlett Yang. They are both XR designers and collaborators at the Immersive Kind. I'd like to ask you all, as I said before, to introduce yourselves, telling us briefly about how you got to where you are now and what is exactly that you do at the Immersive Kind. But I would also like to propose that each one of you also tell us what's your kind of a superpower. It can be anything from any aspect of your life that you recognize as an individual place of power, of potency. For example, I would say my superpower is naturally being sort of a translator for different topics and different people. I like to create connections and bridges between different universes. And it's what I hope to do here today. So I hope I can rise to the occasion. Which one of you wants to start?
So I'll start. My name is Katie James, and I am the CEO and founder of the Immersive Kind. I'm also a creative technologist, and I've got, coming up to 10 years now, working in 3D, immersive, XR, virtual reality, augmented reality, digital design space. So yeah, I'm really interested in how we can use technology to transform the way that we make and create. I'm really interested in the next generation of artists that are pioneering the use of emerging and advanced technologies within their 21st century design practice. And I'm so thrilled that we were able to bring such a great selection of designers and artists together here today for Brazilian Immersive Fashion Week. We love what you guys are doing, and we're absolutely honored to be a part of this conversation today. My superpower would be, multiple superpowers. I'm really interested in ways that, technology can allow us to morph into other beings, particularly avatars. We've been exploring what it means to be a digital human, particularly within the Immersive Kinds Artist Residency Program, which we've been running, and also looking at ways that we can use new technologies such as VR and AR, and building kind of digital collections, and thinking a lot about the kind of sustainable agenda in terms of how we can leave a lighter footprint on the planet, the climate and ecological emergency, and definitely how designers of the future can start to embed digital at the very start of their practice in order for us to be able to change the way that we produce and consume. So I'm interested in all of those themes, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. Thank you.
I'm next. I'm Lucy. I'm the a co-founder of the Immersive Kind and also creative director, also an artist as well, working in immersive technologies, particularly recently in virtual reality, but also really interested in extended reality and how we can move between different realms and digital realms. I started working in digital technologies in my art degree, so I wanted to start challenging the way we experience, the way we immerse ourselves in an artistic perspective. And then I started learning collaboratively with different groups of people all going through the same sort of phase of trying to learn what's emerging, what's happening. And I met Damara in that sort of experience, which was really nice. And also started working with Kadeen with the Immersive Kind, and I feel very honoured and excited to be starting our organisation and talking here today. Damara, do you want to speak next, please?
So hello, thank you for the introduction, Lucy. My name is Damara Inglês. I am a creator, designer of extended reality experiences and virtual fashion. My work journey kind of started over 10 years ago when I first enrolled in a fashion design course. Then I worked a little bit as a freelancer with styling and theater wardrobe that definitely influences the work that I do today. And ultimately, I went to the London College of Fashion to study fashion media practice and criticism. And a big part of my critical lenses through fashion is technology and how we express ourselves via technology and how we can make fashion more inclusive, more disruptive, more sustainable. And yes, definitely this journey also started about 2 years ago with Lucy as part of the Digital Makers Collective. I'm definitely very excited to be speaking here today. Actually, I'm from Angola, so Portuguese is my first language. And also very proud to be surrounded by such a team of powerful women that are about to change the world. So go on, Scarlett.
Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Scarlett, and I am a graduate from London's St Martin's College of Art, and I had a women's wear degree, and I've been working in a couple of bio laboratories and digital fab labs. So my practice is basically combining biodesign, biomaterial research with algorithm generated methods to see, how to incorporate algorithm as if it's growing, just like natural bio elements, and also as well as like VR, XR, virtual reality showroom platform that I've been developing, especially like during the time of COVID. That this was kind of like one of the very few ways it's available to keep showing like creativity. So yeah, and right now I have two routes of exploring these type of my practice in fashion, which is one bio sustainable textile, and the other one is digitalizing garments. Yeah. We know that even though we're at Brazil Immersive Fashion Week, we know that the area that you guys work in and create for is still somewhat complicated and kind of mysterious for a lot of people. Even when we're in an event that talks about it, when we're outside of the tech industry, it can be a bit like, I don't know exactly what they mean and what's the difference between different kinds of technologies and uses that you guys already mentioned. So how would you define in the most objective and maybe simple way what it is that the Immersive Kind do?
So I guess one of the key things with the Immersive Kind is that we're an art and advanced technology platform, but also we're a 24/7 digital community of creative technologists, scientists, biodesigners, architects, that are all kind of pioneering the use of emerging technologies. And like Scarlett was just alluding to, really interested in the kind of new materials and sustainability agenda, thinking about how we're making, and also thinking about how we can envision a future where fashion transcends the physical body, and also exploring how our digital identities can permeate into daily life. We're really interested in how technology can be made more accessible, and also ways that we can make opportunities for collaboration. So we're a team of mostly women, actually. We're female founded. We wanted to make sure that we were a space for inclusivity and digital design, and looking at ways that we could kind of create a space to bring that community together, not just in the UK, but internationally. So we're really interested in digital identities and exploring the fashion industry and democratizing the fashion industry and breaking it down in a way that it's more accessible and inclusive. And I think that the whole kind of landscape in terms of how fashion has been polluting the environment for many, many years now, and brands not taking ownership or responsibility for how they make and how we also as individuals are consuming fashion. We're really interested in kind of opening up that debate and conversation around sustainability, and equally how digital technologies can help us to maybe change the world for the better, and make in a way that is going to be looking at sustainability at the heart of, you know, the design practice, and ways that we can also build an ecosystem of makers and designers and artists that are able to create a new world, reimagine a new world that is fairer, that is more just, and that is more inclusive. So, you know, there's a number of things that we're looking to do, and from an activism point of view, and from a political point of view, we're interested in social justice, design justice, social mobility, the climate and ecological emergency, and ways that we can empower one another to build a world that works for everybody, not just the limited few.
Would anyone like to add something?
Yes, also, I think there's something what's really special about the immersive kind is this community and this opportunity to collaborate. And we're really interested in co-design as well, and opening up this interdisciplinary perspective. I think that was one of the really core parts of how and why the immersive kind was founded, because we really wanted to find this opportunity for different people to work together and take on the challenges that we're facing today. We don't really see one industry or one sector as linear. It's more collaborative, and I think that's when you get the most exciting creative responses.
I would like to also, in the intention of making concepts and terms clear for everyone, and so that we're all on the same page, what's the difference? Because when we talk about the digitalization of fashion, it can mean different things to different people, different brands, different creators. And as Scarlett mentioned, COVID sort of accelerated some of those processes, but not exactly in the best way, let's say, or in the most complete or interesting ways it could, because it was everyone kind of moving really fast to do something. So when we talk about digital and when we talk about immersive, what are the differences regarding fashion and art creation in the context that we're talking about here?
Do you want to take that one?
Hi, sorry. So digitalization, digital technologies is more for like electronic tools, devices, games. It's things that exist digitally. And then, so that would be like the phone, the computer, but also we will start to see digital existing as also data as we start to experience extended reality, also wearables and fashion as well. And then I would say immersive technology is more a tool that is enabling immersion, the way you experience something. It's challenging multiple senses. It's more a way of how you experience something, and create potentially with the emerging immersive technologies like extended reality, it would be creating something that is believable. So you could be existing in one space and then also you've been transported into another space. That's how I approach it. And also at the Immersive Kind, that's why we're really interested in immersion as well, because it's also challenging and it's bridging the gap for situations, collaboration.
Damara, do you want to talk about your practice, particularly around, your work using tilt brush and creating digital and immersive clothing experiences? And also, Scarlett, I'd love for you to extend on your work in terms of, the concept of beyond the catwalk, beyond the photographer's studio, beyond going into the sample size houses, and really thinking about how you're kind of opening up this completely new dialogue for brands and the fashion world to engage in a completely new way through immersive and digital storytelling. So Damara, I'd like to start with you, and then Scarlett, if you could just talk afterwards. Damara.
Yes, definitely. So again, having a fashion design and fashion criticism background, my main goal working with technology is to always ask, how can fashion be more inclusive, more diverse? And also the beauty that whenever there is a new medium or a new set of tools, new voices also have the chance to emerge and to show different sets of skills and different ways of experiencing the industry. Mm-hmm. I started by working a lot with Unity and basically downloading free 3D assets and adding them on top of augmented reality apps. And then I started experimenting more and looking for other processes until I ended up finding the Google Tilt Brush, which is basically a virtual reality sculpting / painting tool. And it was such a moment, like such a revelation for me, because it was the first time that I felt that my physical body was a virtual tool and that I was not commanding a computer. For the first time, I was actually the computer. So this is when I came out of the closet as a fashion tech cyborg. And this process is very interesting because I'm able to add my physical self into this digital layer and then apply this digital layer on my own body. And that process is very interesting for me. And also recently I worked closely with Verizon Media to develop the fabric of reality, which was the first ever of its kind fully immersive fashion show. And it was a very interesting experience. I worked using Google Tilt Brush as well, but this time it was not to apply the graphics on my body. The graphics would stay on the body of the avatar and stay in the virtual world. And just by itself, that's already a different process. And it was absolutely amazing to design a garment, not to be worn, but to be felt. So I was designing it in Tilt Brush, and I could make the garment giant, and then every little drawing that I would make, I would have to like physically move my body around the threads. So it's like I'm this little sewing machine. It's insane, it's surreal, and it's very, very inspiring. Yeah, definitely.
It's so cool, Damara. And we're gonna be revealing a really special piece of couture that Damara has designed especially for the Immersive Kind collaboration with Brazilian Immersive Fashion Week. And we're also working on something with Scarlett as well, which we're going to be sharing with you guys in the coming days. Scarlett, I'd really like you to kind of talk about your practice, particularly, you know, how we envision the future of fashion and, you know, transcending from the physical and digital, and particularly the work that you've been doing around digital showrooms.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so for me, I think I've been really like getting a lot of inspirations from games, like gaming, the gaming industry. Like it's a booming industry now, and yeah, even before the lockdown, people are really, you know, really drawn to playing games and immerse themselves into that gaming environment, right? And yeah, and then they find out like, oh, people actually buy into the concept of avatar clothing. People actually do get attached to, you know, these avatar that they build up for themselves, that represent themselves, and this could potentially be very interesting to see if we can carry this into the fashion industry, you know, and yeah, because then essentially what we see the fashion culture is that we as consumers or creators, we kind of project our vision, project the meaning of fashion onto the material of clothing, right? But then now, since we're more and more moving onto digital platforms with the, you know, accessible software or hardware technology, and yeah, it would be quite a good way, you know, quite a method with loads of potentials to see, okay, if we can design purely digital assets clothing, and yeah, so transcend the traditional physical mean of clothing, you know. And yeah, so I've been trying that out quite a lot, of like seeing how could use like a virtual reality platform or like a browser-based, web-based platform. You can literally walk around and you can dress yourself with clothing, just like in games, and or like say you take a picture, the AR would put that onto your body. Yeah, just different ways playing with that to see how user are giving the feedbacks, and yeah, there's quite a lot of room to develop in this, to explore, and I think it's quite exciting.
Absolutely. And what I'm really interested as well, Scarlett, particularly with some of the projects that I've been working on from an innovation and industry perspective, using tools such as virtual reality to create other worlds and reimagine how we might be able to experience fashion either through a headset or through a lens or through an augmented reality experiences. I'm really interested in how we might be able to show the world that clothing does not need to be physical in order to exist, and that there's multiple ways for us to experience fashion. And I think the kind of experiences that we're having now and the ways that we're interacting with one another so much more through our digital devices and being able to get dressed up digitally for events such as this, I think we're going to see much more of that in the future. And going back to one of the comments that Damara made earlier on around being able to be fully immersed as the machine creating in Tiltbrush, and that kind of, you know, that design process right the way through to the manufacturing of, you know, the clothing and couture, I think is going to be much more prevalent in the fashion industry, particularly thinking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, and Industry 4.0, and thinking a lot about the future of work. So I think that the work, particularly within the Immersive Kind community and the designers that are really pioneering these tools and techniques within their practice, I think that those will be the skills that will be needed for the fashion industry. And I'm doing lots of work in and around that space, and I've also co-founded a 3D Skills Academy here in London. So we're looking at ways that we can use tools such as virtual reality, AR, 3D printing, thinking about the future of textiles as well, and ways that haptics are going to be used in order to feel and touch and build textures and texture libraries for the fashion world. And, you know, we're doing lots of really interesting work in that space, and I think it's really important that there's opportunities for knowledge transfer and exchange, and that's why I think the work that we're doing at the Immersive Kind, and equally the practice that we have around bringing in this kind of interdisciplinary approach to making and creating, and bringing in artists and scientists and technologists and those that are, you know, really thinking about new ways of making and doing things, I think is something that we're really excited by.
You got to a point that it was what I was going to ask you and wanted to ask you, because when we were seeing this process happening, it's a big change in how the fashion and the textile industry has operated for a really, really, really long time, and what clothes and dressing and creating clothes and making clothes have meant for also a really long time. So how do creators start if they want to do something like that? How do people that used to make physical clothes and in a more traditional way can start navigating these new ideas and paths and platforms and mostly, I think, ways of thinking and creative processes? Because I think that's key on how the discussion moves forward from here. We're not talking about digitalizing a fashion show in a traditional way, like a digital runway, as you guys mentioned before. It's way more complex or richer and a lot more potent than that. So I wanted to also ask you, how do you work with traditional designers, if you do, and how can they think about it and start thinking about it?
Damara, do you want to answer that one?
Yes, definitely. I think that that's a very interesting question. I think that first of all, if you are a traditional, if there is such thing as a traditional fashion designer, the first thing you should do is find a community, find a virtual fashion, digital fashion community with whom you can exchange skills, talk about your concepts, collaborate with other people, because you will never learn anything from one day to the other and all by yourself. Also, a lot of YouTube tutorials. And there are great tools. For example, Cloud 3D is a software where you are literally a fashion designer. You design your patterns and then you activate like the virtual sense of the garment. I'm not very familiar with the software, but I know that you can use the traditional methods of creating fashion to create virtual fashion. I also think that it's very important not to look at virtual fashion as something that only fashion designers would do, but as a great opportunity for people with other set of skills and other creative backgrounds to get into the fashion industry, like specifically 3D designers that didn't have anything to do with fashion, and because of that they have a really fresh way of looking back at the industry. We see a lot of virtual fashion, as you were saying, digitized fashion shows that basically simulate the physical clothes that we already wear every day. And the question of virtual fashion, personally, is that it is not to show what you would wear on your physical body, but to express yourself as a virtual citizen in a virtual society. What do you want to virtually say? And for that, there isn't a need necessarily to express fashion, shape, textile, or anything like that. I think it can be more abstract, more sensorial. What is the textile of the future? Is it maybe just sound? Maybe just, you know, I'm wearing my garment and I hear a sound and it makes me feel cuddled or embraced. I think that there are a lot of many interesting processes that can come out of that. I think that above it all, one of the most interesting parts of it will be to look at how virtual fashion influences material fashion. Maybe virtual fashion will give material fashion a break. We see now with COVID, many virtual fashion brands are emerging, like the Tribute brand or the Fabricant or Virtual Superland. And how will they influence the traditional material fashion houses For example, Gucci, just with this COVID-19 quarantine, decided to go from over 4 shows per year to just 2 shows per year, seasonless, genderless, simply showing their clothes to people who want to buy them globally. So I think we are already seeing how virtual fashion can influence also the material side of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that, and really, really good points, Damara. And I'm also thinking a lot about, you know, the UK fashion industry is worth something like 21 billion. And I think that there, you know, that now is a time, particularly in a post-COVID world, we need to start rethinking about ways that we're making, and we need to be bringing in opportunities, looking at the next generation of designers particularly, and the new startups that you've alluded to as well, and what learning can be transcribed from that, particularly around how we're manufacturing and producing clothes. When you look at countries like India and all of the atrocities that have been taking place within the fashion industry, people not being paid properly, materials that are just sent straight to landfill, and the climate and ecological emergency being ignored, I think now is a time for us to really start thinking about a tomorrow that is much more inclusive, accessible, and also is very much about putting you know, workers at the heart of the best practice models, supporting workers, particularly now that many people around the world are losing their jobs due to the global health emergency and the pandemic, and also thinking about the skills gap and the digital agenda and ways that you know, organizations around the world, industry, academia, startup community need to come together in order to look at ways that we can reimagine and do things differently, and also thinking about the technologies of tomorrow and how they might be able to help us to build a fashion industry that is sustainable. Scarlett, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that? Particularly on supply chains and thinking about, you know, garments and the travel and the, you know, the lack of aeroplanes in the sky at the moment. I think that's also something that is a good thing, but equally thinking about the damage that is happening, particularly in the UK, because there's so many jobs that have been lost due to the global health pandemic. And I'm really interested in ways that we might be able to support those individuals that have lost their jobs at this time.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think ever since the pandemic, I've been noticing that some of the students in university or fresh graduates are, you know, there are more and more of them starting to, you know, learn about how to use 3D programs. And it's, yeah, there's a huge surge that everyone knows that how important it is, and actually it's really efficient to do, you know, to do parts of your either as fashion design, like pattern cutting, draping process, or just show your like color samples to clients or tutors or patrons. And it's really in many different ways. It's, yeah, all across the production line, the production process is very useful in many different ways, really. So yeah, and well, actually also like the adaptation, the application of using 3D modeling, 3D software, 3D rendering, it's actually been already quite widely used in other design industry, like the car industry, product design, industrial design, jewelry. Everyone uses it, but yeah, I guess fashion design is a bit more traditional. But yeah, it starts to, you know, also catch up, so which I think is really good.
I agree, and I think this could become a decisive moment in a shift towards a more sustainable practices across the fashion industry, including a wider acceptance of more flexible remote working, and also looking at a review of the global shipping practices. And the travel for fashion weeks, which Scarlett and Damara and Lucy and I have all been thinking a lot about, and thinking, you know, particularly about, you know, carbon footprint data, and ways that, we'll be able to explore that as part of the rise of kind of digitized materials and products. And I think there's a huge opportunity now for us to kind of reimagine the way that we do things, and thinking about the kind of environmental impact on the planet, thinking about the digital skills agenda as well, and ways that we can kind of support future workforces and create jobs and pathways into the fashion industry that are going to be sustainable and well paid.
I think it's amazing how you guys put a lot of different issues together, and you look at this idea of immersive fashion and the future of consumption in a very sort of systemic way. So you see that there are a lot of moving parts, and they're all interconnected. And we're talking about climate change, but we're talking about diversity, we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about feminism, we're talking about a lot of things. And I think specifically when we talk about the fashion industry, there's a complicated situation, because we know that the climate emergency is likely to impact women more than men. And there's also race differences, also social economical differences and regions of the world that are going to be impacted in different ways. But we know that women, and especially Black women, and especially poor women, they tend to be the most impacted by the climate change and the climate emergency. And at the same time, the fashion industry is made of women, mostly. And it's also kind of at the workforce, because it's also kind of complicated that the big names are usually men, or a lot of men. The famous people in fashion are men, and the workforce is all made of women. So I think just to keep talking a little bit about this, how do you see this? How do we bring these people into the industry so that they're not unsupported again by all the changes that are going to be happening with the planet and also in the industries? So how do we keep this or transform this into a sort of a safer and fairer and more just space for the workforce of women that depend on this and that are going to be impacted, likely to be more impacted by everything that is happening in the world?
Lucy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things would be education for the next generation, or also people working in the workforce now, learning about the new technologies that they need to know, depending on what part they are within the industry. But I think it's really important to emphasize that, because when you give that empowerment of knowing the tools and the skills, then the worker can then start to progress, add their own creative energy into this, and also then educate and pass that on to the next person. That to me is really important. And I think going back to that, I think if anyone is watching this and is thinking, how do I get into digital technology? It's about taking steps. You don't need to worry about creating this giant immersive world. And you can start by just starting with Adobe, learning how to use softwares, design in softwares, and then you just slowly start to join communities and then learn more about open source software as well.
I think that's a really good point, Lucy, and I echo those sentiments. And I also think we need to think about, Industry 4.0. And that to me is looking at the kind of future of work and how we can make the future of work more fun, efficient, and most importantly, how we can make it more fair. I'm thinking about how we develop a reskilling and upskilling agenda, particularly due to the ramifications of the economic challenges that we're going to be facing internationally, globally, due to millions of people around the world being impacted by losing their jobs due to COVID. So we're thinking a lot about reskilling, upskilling, data management applications that can help the apparel supply chain to adopt technology and align human capital to big shifts in the way that how we make and manufacture, and also thinking about opening up multilingual applications that can ensure that workers around the world are able to access training and move into more digitally secure jobs that will be able to allow them to live sustainable lives, and also to be paid effectively. And I think that artificial intelligence softwares and Clove 3D and AI and machine learning, all of these, we're not going to press stop on these technologies. They're going to continue to evolve, and I think that that we need to kind of create opportunities for people that are from lower incomes and from poorer areas. We need to be opening up conversations and building better policies and holding governments to account and holding the fashion industry to account in terms of how they employ and what they consider to be best practice. I think we need to be breaking that down and really looking at it with a much closer magnifying glass and making sure that manufacturers around the world are looking at new ways to retrain workers and build sustainable workforces for the fashion sector. But also it's a really exciting time, because when you look at the work that's being done now by people like Scarlett and Damara and Lucy and I within our practice and within the studios, I think this is a really exciting time to embrace these tools and applications. And I know that the fashion industry are chomping at the bit to look at ways that they can reimagine their brands and using gaming technologies and using AI and augmented reality experiences in order to do that. So I think it's a really exciting time to come and work in the kind of creative tech industries and in the design sector. And I think that, I'm hopeful that we're going to be building a much better alternative to what already exists in the future.
For my last question, when I hear you guys talking, I think it's amazing how you have a very you're activists. It's in your speech and it's in the issues that you bring. It's, as I said before, you see it as a systems thing, and it's about multiple issues and multiple things that we have the opportunity to kind of address in a way when we start looking at consumption and at fashion and art production in a ways that you do. And another thing that emerges from this is the problem of gender bias tech. And when we talk about, for example, personal assistants or brand avatars, I work with brands, so I look a lot of those at those things, and it keeps surprising me that it's almost 2021 and all assistants are female and all brand avatars are based on women that reflect the same kind of aesthetics and the same references. And when we look at what you guys mentioned before as reimagining avatars, reimagining clothes to not be gender directed or and creating different personas and thinking about this in a whole different digital perspective that does not have to be related or represent a living person in a binary or a more conventional way. How do you guys see that also as a space for other debates that are emerging regarding those things, and how we talk about genderless voices and things like that?
Damara, do you want to take that one?
That's actually a great question. I'm always wondering, why is it Alexa? Why is it Siri? I mean, you also have the male voices, but no one, I mean, I don't use them. I was actually having this debate with men in my family, and they are very much like, why do you have to, you know, put gender on everything and put feminism on everything? It's just a device. But truth is that it's not just a device. It's my niece that knows that her place in society as a woman is to serve someone. But at the same time, I think about the fact that perhaps many women wouldn't feel comfortable having a male voice just kind of like jumping out of their phone out of the blue as well. So there are like some different points. When it comes to the gender gap in terms of skill sharing, there are so many great initiatives in relation to this, like amazing collectives like the Immersive Kind, DG Girl, that give you skills and allow women and focus on women and, you know, inspire them in that sense. Also, you have the Institute of Coding, which is a great institute as well. They get a lot of academics and universities together, and the main goal is to encourage women, and I say women in the most inclusive way, women with an X, and non-binary minorities to follow careers in tech. So that's a great initiative as well. When it comes to avatars representation, I think that's where it gets problematic. I think that we spent so many decades consuming all of these fashion images that it's now a bit hard to create other images out of this. I think that as we create more and more emotional memories that are connected to virtual fashion and to virtual fashion shows, we will also be more and more able to think of virtual fashion in more abstract ways. For me, it's very problematic to look at CGI avatars, especially CGI avatars of color that are not represented by people of color. So like Lil Miquela or Shudu Graham, it really makes me think if we are not yet again engaging on the same issue of representing who you are not, potentially harming these people, like which narratives do these avatars engage in that actually help the communities that they represent? Why is Lil Miquela talking about the rights of robots and not about the rights of Latinx people in the United States? So for me, it's a little bit like, as minority women gain voices, then there are these other forces that create minority women in shape of puppets that will then speak to more people. And that is very, very, very complicated. On the other hand, you have amazing designers, women of colors that are designers, like Sarah Nicole Francois. I absolutely love her avatars. They are super, you know, Black culture, video vixen kind of flow. And also the Institute of Digital Fashion. They also design some really interesting avatars that are non-binary avatars that have no gender, that some of them have like prosthetic legs, you know, also the representation of disabled bodies. Yeah. And others also don't focus so much on representing the body in itself, but this kind of abstract human body that looks like an alien and is made of glass. So that's definitely like my virtual beauty icon direction. Is this more like abstract sci-fi Alien and the Predator sort of deity and character?
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. And I think this is such a great question, Luisa, and really thinking a lot about this within the immersive kind. People that are building technology, who is it? It's mostly white, straight men. And I think, you know, we need to be really thinking about the big tech companies that are owning our data, that are using our data to sell us products, and also thinking about how it's being used to kind of swing elections as well. I'm really interested in that particular debate, and there's so much that we could say about that. But ultimately, who is building technology and what is that technology being used for? And I think we need to be having much bigger conversations and more open conversations for society. You know, within the Immersive Kind, we're an inclusive 24/7 global community. And we're also a support network that brings together diverse and inclusive voices, not just from the UK, but internationally. We're championing queer voices. I'm a gay woman working in the technology industry, and I wanted to use my platform to foster, to cultivate, to bring about change, to empower, and to build a movement that is going to, you know, look at ways that we can tell new stories and create new experiences, but equally how we can support the trans community, how we can support non-binary people, and also how we can support you know, women. You know, we work in a very bro culture industry, and I want to do something to address that. And I think that the Immersive Kind community is very much about kind of fostering this new way of doing things, and bringing together voices from many different communities and sectors. We need more women in the boardroom. We need more women making decisions about what we're designing. We need more queer, we need more Black, we need more non-binary people working in the fashion industry, not working on the shop floor, on the boardroom, owning the company. That's what I want to see happening, and we need to see that across the board, not just in the fashion industry. When I look at the FTSE 100, you know, list of female CEOs on a list of 100, 7 women. And what are those women doing to support more women and more trans people and more gay people? And one of the things that I experienced as a woman working in this sector was that I found that a lot of those women that were in a position of power didn't want to help other women. And I made it a point within my practice that I would use the platform that I had working in the industry to support other young designers and build a network and an ecosystem that was about fostering that mindset that we need to help one another. We need to be thinking about being inclusive. We need to reimagine how we want to be kind to one another and support you know, the next generation of designers and artists and creatives. And the Immersive Kind was a form of activism for me, and I think it's really exciting what we're doing, and I really hope that it's going to be you know, a catalyst to bring about change and new ways of doing things, and supporting particularly those from underrepresented groups and backgrounds. They're the ones that I really want to come and be a part of what we're doing.
Unfortunately, we have to end this conversation. I could spend the whole day here because there are so many different aspects that we could be discussing and talking about. It's such an honor to be able to have this conversation with you guys and to learn more about what you do, because I do think that you guys are impacting a lot of different aspects of the creative industry and the tech industry and the fashion industry. So it's great that we had this space. I hope a lot of people watch this and start thinking about those things again and start moving towards changing and learning and bringing more people into this space. So thank you so much for your time, for your generosity on all your answers and all your reflections. It's been a great pleasure. I think we have to end this now.
You did an amazing job hosting us. You guided us so well, and we loved your questions. And I thought you did us proud. Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of
thank you
today. We
thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And Scarlett and Damara and Lucy, big virtual hugs from Hertfordshire all the way to Brazil and Latin America.
Yeah, to all of you.
And we love what you guys are doing at Brazilian Immersive Fashion Week. Keep up all of the incredible work, and we're really honoured to be a part of this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We will, and we'll keep close. Thank you so much. Obrigada a todo mundo que assistiu essa conversa. Vocês podem também continuar vendo outros conteúdos dessa programação, também acessar outras coisas que vocês queiram assistir em brifw.com. Muito obrigada, gente, e até mais.